Okay, we'll now hear from Art Macomber, who is running for Attorney General. Here's Art.
Hello, my name is Art Macomber, and I'm running for Idaho Attorney General. I'm pro-life, pro-gun, and pro-freedom. I'm a husband, a father, and I've practiced in the Idaho courts for 15 years, arguing before the Idaho State Supreme Court 6 times. I stepped out of the courtroom and into this race because Idaho's in trouble. And I'm going to talk to you about a lot of things tonight. But the good news is this: it's not too late to take back our state. Over the past 2 years, Idahoans have been subjected to draconian public health measures unprecedented in our history. As I've traveled the state the past year, I've felt the fear and frustration of thousands of citizens who no longer recognize their state. Idahoans watched as businesses were shuttered, the unvaccinated fired, children masked, schools, churches closed. We watched as Sarah Brady was arrested while her children played in a park in Meridian. We watched as Gabriel Wrench was arrested during an outside worship service in Moscow. I emphasize we watched because Idahoans risked police action if they did not obey. How much better off would Idahoans have been over the past 2 years if they had a fighter that actually considered their Article 1 constitutional rights in the AG's office? Ask yourself, how many Idahoans would business? How many would still have a job? How many families would still have a home? How many children would have avoided social isolation and the resulting depression, drug abuse, suicide? Our system of checks and balances failed during the COVID pandemic. Political actors entrusted with defending your liberties were either silent or silenced. Your state executive branch sacrificed your statutory and constitutional rights on the altar of CARES Act funds. Your state legislative branch was stymied by the executive branch in its efforts to convene over the summer. Finally, your state judicial branch suspended jury trials, then lawlessly rewrote legislation that subverted speedy trial rights. This election season, Idahoans are looking for justice. Idahoans look to the U.S. and state constitutions to understand what went wrong. Idahoans look to the rule of law to be upheld. And finally, Idahoans want there to be consequences for bad behavior. When laws are broken and civil rights abridged, bad actors need to be held accountable. It's time for Idahoans to take back their state. I'm running to be your next Attorney General because I believe that nothing less than the future of our republic is at stake. As your next Attorney General, I will fight executive overreach, strengthen state sovereignty, and protect Idaho values. Folks, these are not just campaign slogans to me. If I had been your Attorney General during the past 2 years, I would have joined the Texas versus Pennsylvania election integrity suit. I would have issued a public legal opinion at the first renewal of the governor's emergency proclamation. And finally, if Mr. Brad Little decided to renew his proclamation a second time, I would have sued him for acting outside his constitutional and statutory authority. These are not radical actions. Our founding fathers anticipated abuse of power. It's as natural as the sun and the rain. It is shameful, in fact, to not exercise constitutional checks and balances Americans have bled and died for to protect. When exercised, these adversarial levers of power protect the freedoms and the values we hold dear. And when not exercised, tyranny results. It's time for Idahoans to take back their state. Where was the current Attorney General during the COVID pandemic? Sadly, your Attorney General publicly states his job is to represent the governor, not the people. He did not enforce the Constitution he swore an oath to uphold. When public health districts required masking, schools were closed, and the governor closed churches and required mail-in voting in 2020. If Idahoans are looking for a fighter to represent the people, the current AG is not your man. Well, what about my other opponent? He says he will represent the people, but let's look at the facts. After an undistinguished 11-year law career, the former immigration attorney turned to politics. During the past 15 years, he's held 2 legislative positions
and is presently a registered lobbyist. In 2014, he failed in his attempt to convene Idaho's annual Republican convention, and he failed in his bid for U.S. House Majority Leader. In 2016, he failed to return to Idaho with anything to show for his 6 years in Washington, D.C., and in 2018, he failed in his gubernatorial bid. Now, it's no secret I've called for Raul Labrador to withdraw from this race. His lack of legal experience makes him unqualified for the Attorney General position. Raul Labrador is not the fighter Idaho is looking for. If Idaho's looking for a fighter to protect working people from the jab, allow churches to exercise rights of faith, and to protect children from unwholesome influences, it will require a legally skilled attorney willing and able to move mountains. I'm the only candidate with the skills and experience and temperament to fight for Idahoans. I think it's time for Idahoans to take back their state. I first visited Idaho in 1976. During that visit, I purchased 1 square inch of land at a museum fundraiser in Idaho City. To others, it was just a piece of dirt. To me, it was my toehold in the state. From that day forward, my dream was to move to Idaho. My wife and I are originally from New Jersey, and our trip to Idaho was through California, but in 1995, I finally was able to move my family to Nampa, Idaho. We became active members of the Presbyterian Church as I worked at Micron Electronics. Many of our most precious memories are from this time. I got my college degree in 1998, then graduated law school when I was 48 years old. During law school, my young family sacrificed by living in a 38-foot fifth wheel while I made a 1-hour commute each way to attend law school. I gained a first-rate law school education, and in 2005, we moved to Coeur d'Alene to start my solo law practice specializing in real property. And 15 years later, I'm working my heart out as your candidate for Idaho Attorney General. My candidacy offers the only hope for Idahoans to take back the freedoms we took for granted only a few years ago. Let's start with the fact that I'm a lawyer. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a bought and paid for lobbyist. I'm not beholden to any special interests. I'm a proven fighter. The AG's job is a law job, not a policy job. I stepped out of the courtroom and into this race to fight for Idaho. My skills are sharp and I can take a punch as well as give one. I grew my law firm from solo to 6 attorneys operating in 3 states. I've managed and mentored new attorneys. I've provided thought leadership to legal professionals. I've studied the Idaho Constitution for 15 years, and as a practicing attorney in the U.S. Constitution longer than that in my free time. I've published numerous legal articles and taught law at Gonzaga School of Law and North Idaho College. Finally, I wrote the 2018 Idaho Constitutional Amendment limiting Brad Little's executive overreach, so I've been fighting for Idaho already. Please join other freedom-loving Idahoans on May 17 to vote Art Macomber for Idaho Attorney General. It is time for Idahoans to take back their state. Thank you.
Next up is Art Macomber, running for Attorney General. Can you give us your views regarding the constitutionality of federal agencies and their ability to usurp power? For example, do you believe that the ATF has any authority to determine what firearms or hearing protection devices are restricted for civilian use? And what steps can be taken to more thoroughly restore and protect our Second Amendment rights?
Thank you. You have these 2 little books. You have the federal constitution and the state constitution, and they exist in a relationship with each other, designed to check the power of the other one when one gets out of control. You remember in 1955 when federal troops went to Alabama and said, this little black girl gets to go to school here. And the state was saying no, and the federal government was saying yes. That's a question of intercession, where the federal government interceded on behalf of a citizen to enforce federal law on the state. But many people don't realize the states have the same power. We have the power of intercession. So when Joe Biden gets out of control and shuts down all oil and gas leases in the state of Idaho like he did in March 2020, the state AG gets to step up and sue them on behalf of the state of Idaho to really push our state sovereignty. So two things are going on. The Constitution of the United States is a grant of power from the states and from the people. It is very limited. It is designed to live within a cage. Article 1, Section 8 has all the things they're allowed to do. The Constitution of the state of Idaho is a limitation on state power. So if it's not in here, then the state gets to do it within its traditional police powers. Police powers being health, safety, nuisance, and morality. It's all governed by the Idaho State Constitution. And so when people talk about the Second Amendment rights, I don't automatically default to the federal Second Amendment. I default to Section 11 of Article 1 of the Idaho Constitution. It actually provides a greater protection to firearms rights of individual citizens than does the Second Amendment. So we need to be careful. We're not going to federalize every problem. My dad used to tell me this when I was fighting with my brother. Don't make a federal case out of it, he would say. Right? This makes a difference in the way we govern ourselves. And the way we need to start governing ourselves is go to our state constitution first. Yes. And then go to state law. And only if we need to, go to the federal document. So in terms of the ATF or the OSHA or the other agencies that have just ballooned into federal existence since primarily 1937, we have to cut back the federal power in Idaho. And we need to make sure that the federal government, with me and the other AGs around the country, gets pushed back into this original cage that was designed to limit the federal power. The state power is where we need to go. This is where we need to exercise our rights in Idaho. So in terms of the federal government coming here, one of the things I would like to do is make it so that when a federal agency or a federal law enforcement action has to happen in Idaho, the AG gets told about it beforehand, minimum like 24, 48 hours, and then the local sheriff is actually the one that evaluates the situation and makes the arrest on behalf of the federal power. We had our Ruby Ridge, we don't need a Waco, okay? Idaho should be running Idaho, not the federal government.